Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Wednesday. Now, if you're throwing a jig head, maybe it's for swim baits, shaky heads, chatterbaits, or swim jigs. They all have different bait keepers. Now, there are positives and negatives of each bait keepers. You may have one that never has the plastic rip or come off, but it costs you a lot of fish. Maybe you have one that is totally wrecking the action of your bait, or you have one that constantly rips off, but you get a lot more bites because of how much action that bait has. So I'm gonna go into each one of the bait keepers that I use, and then I'm gonna go into some that I don't think have any purpose whatsoever in your boat, and you should never buy them. So hopefully that'll save you guys some money. And first off, I wanna thank you for subscribing to this channel. If you've hit that like button, thank you for doing that as well. That helps the channel out a lot. And if you left me a comment, I will return your comment. So there are quite a few different style keepers, and I'm just going to jump right into one of the most popular expensive lures that there is, the jackhammer chatterbait. Now, as far as putting a piece of plastic on the back of that, that's going to rip off a lot. It's a pain to put $1 or $2 trailers on the back of a chatterbait. Now, why this is like this is when you have no lead on the shank of your hook, or less lead than you would with the normal standard bait keeper, you're going to get a lot more side-to-side wobbling action out of your bait. Now, unfortunately, what's going to happen a lot is you're going to get a rip in the plastic, and when you go to make a long cast, it's going to rip off. Now, why you need just the metal hook on there is you don't want to have any lead on the shank of the hook when you're looking for side-to-side, searching action, whatever you want to call it. Now, jackhammer, you think $17, you should have a bait keeper that never rips my plastic. But if you did put that standard lead bait keeper on there, you're gonna not get that erratic kicking action that makes this bait so good. Same thing with this swim jig. If I want to reel this swim jig really slow along the bottom, I want the most movement in this bait that I possibly can get, because that's going to generate the most strikes. Now, if I'm just throwing my swim bait out and I'm burning it back to the boat, then that's going to be the best, because it's going to stay up there. That swim bait is going to be stuck on that jig head. It's not going to come off, but I'm not going to get as much action as I would if it was just metal, no lead, because that lead is going to act like a keel and it's going to keep that bait running straight and true. Now, you don't always want that. That wobble is going to generate a lot of bites. It's going to vibrate. It's going to keep that bait from just sitting still. When those fish get near it and you're reeling it slow, you want it to be moving as much as it possibly can while staying in the specific strike zone. So when it comes to a chatterbait that I'm going to slowly reel on the bottom, a swim jig that I'm slowly going to reel on the bottom, or a chatterbait that I want kicking and moving and getting as much action as I possibly can, attracting those fish through their lateral line, I don't want a bunch of lead on the shank of my hook. I want these metal keepers. Even though they are a pain, they're going to give my bait the most action. Now, if I'm doing the Alabama shake, I'm implementing the action and I'm making a bunch of pitches, I'm throwing it around docks and grass, I want my trailer to stay up there. I'm implementing the action, so I'm not too concerned about my bait wobbling because I'm popping it and pulsing it. I will go with a swim jig that has that lead keeper on there. I'm not too worried about a lead being down the shank of my hook, because I want it to run true. I want that to act as a keel, and I want that bait to come back straight. And when you have that style keeper, I mean, you can't pull that plastic off there. That is on there. So when I'm flipping it and pitching it and skipping it and doing all these things with it, I know it's going to stay on there. So efficiency is important when I'm doing the Alabama shake, and I want that bait to come back straight. I'm not worried about it doing that. I'm going to be kicking it and making all the action with my rod tip, and it's coming back straight. That's what I want. Now, when it comes to shaky heads, this is another very important lesson that took me quite a few years to learn. I spent a lot of money on baits that I don't use anymore. So the spring, I'm going to show you exactly how this works. This is a bait that I don't ever use. The only time that I could ever see this jig head being necessary would be maybe if you were skipping docks or something, but even that, I think there's better designs. Now what happens that costs you a lot of fish, so you rig your shaky head up, here it is, and a fish bites it. Now you set the hook, that's gonna go through there, but now you have all this plastic. So the fish is hooked, but you have all this plastic pushing against the fish's mouth because that bait is not coming off that spring. So you have a fish that's hooked, but in between the bend of the hook, you have all this plastic there. That's constantly pushing that fish off the end of the hook. So a much better design, this is a Gambler Giggy head, and there's the one with the spring. And now here's the one with the spike. I'll do the same thing, rig it up. Now, even though that this is not as efficient, because you are going to have that pull off there every once in a while you're casting, your hookup ratio, landing ratio is going to go way up, because what is going to happen now when you do get a fish to bite and he gets hooked, now that's a brand fresh worm on there, that's going to just slide off there. And then you have nothing pushing on the fish. So when the fish is hooked, you have nothing pushing against the fish. And that is a Gambler Giggy head. It's similar to a spot remover by Buckeye, but when you have a fish hooked, now it's just basically a wacky rig, and you're not going to have all that plastic pushing on that fish off the end of the hook. So that is my 100% of the time shaky head, the Gambler Giggy head with the spike, not the one with the screw. But it is very important to understand, do I want to be efficient? Am I skipping docks where I can make 1,000 casts without the bait coming off? Could be any of those baits, a swim jig, a chatterbait. Very important to understand which ones are most important to you. And then am I getting very few bites? I need to land everything. Am I not getting enough bites because of my bait keeper? So very important to make sure you have the right bait keeper on your jig head. Try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.